Have you ever poured your soul into someone only to be met with cold indifference? It fractures your pride and drains your spirit. But what if her lack of appreciation isn't your defeat, but your greatest awakening? Here is the ancient Stoic formula to remain unbreakable when you are undervalued. The rain beat violently against the cobblestone streets, mirroring the storm that raged inside Julian's chest. He had spent the last 6 months completely dismantling his own life to fit into hers. He had compromised his ambitions, adjusted his schedule, and offered his heart with open, bleeding hands. And her response? A cold, indifferent glance, a text message left unread, a passive-aggressive dismissal of his efforts. She had looked at him not as a prize to be cherished, but as an option to be weighed and ultimately discarded. Julian felt hollowed out. He walked through the city, the freezing rain soaking through his coat, until he reached the heavy oak door of a rare bookstore owned by an old family friend, Elias. Elias was a man who seemed to exist outside of time. He was grounded, perpetually calm, and possessed a quiet strength that Julian desperately envied. When Julian stepped inside, the bell above the door chimed softly, cutting through the heavy silence. The air smelled of old paper, leather, and brewing black tea. Elias looked up from a worn, leather-bound book, adjusting his spectacles. He took one look at Julian, drenched, trembling, and entirely broken, and simply pointed to a wooden chair by the small fireplace. "You look like a man who has just lost his kingdom," Elias said, his voice a low, steady rumble. "I lost her," Julian replied, his voice cracking. He collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. "I gave her everything, Elias. I did everything right. I was patient. I was kind. I was providing. And she looked right through me. She doesn't value me at all. What did I do wrong? How do I make her see what she is throwing away?" Elias slowly closed his book. It was a copy of Epictetus's Discourses. He walked over to the fire, stoking the embers until they flared, casting a warm, flickering glow across the room. "Your first mistake," Elias began, handing Julian a hot mug of tea, "is believing that her perception of you is a math equation. You think that if you input enough kindness, time, and sacrifice, the output must equal love and respect. But human beings are not equations, Julian, and a woman's desire is not something you can negotiate or purchase with good deeds." Elias sat across from him, leaning forward, his eyes piercing. The ancient Stoics had a foundational principle. It is the bedrock of all peace and all power. Epictetus called it the dichotomy of control. There are things that are within our power, and there are things that are not. Your actions, your character, your choices, your values, these belong to you. But her feelings, her reactions, her capacity to appreciate you, those are entirely outside of your control. This brings us to the first Stoic way: absolute acceptance of what you cannot command. When a woman does not value you, the immense pain you feel is rarely just about her absence. It is born from the friction between reality and your expectations. You suffer because you are demanding the universe to bend to your will. You are standing in the middle of a torrential downpour, screaming at the clouds to stop raining. You are trying to command the weather, Julian, Elias explained softly. You are exhausting your soul trying to force another human being to feel something they do not. And in doing so, you are surrendering your own power. You are handing the keys to your emotional kingdom to a woman who doesn't even want to enter the gates. You must accept, radically and completely, that her lack of appreciation is her choice, governed by her own internal world, her own flaws, and her own desires. It has nothing to do with your inherent worth. Julian stared into the fire. But it feels personal. It feels like a judgment on me. If I were better, stronger, wealthier, maybe she would have stayed. Maybe she would have valued me. That is the ego speaking, Elias corrected gently. The ego demands to be the center of the universe. It demands that everything happens because of us. But sometimes a woman simply cannot see your value because she is blind to that specific frequency. A masterpiece painting has no value to a man who refuses to open his eyes. Does the painting lose its worth? No. The tragedy belongs entirely to the blind man. Julian took a slow sip of the tea, the warmth slowly spreading through his shivering body. The concept was jarring but liberating. He had spent months agonizing over how to change his approach, how to text her differently, how to dress better, how to become the phantom ideal she seemed to be chasing. He realized now that he had been fighting a ghost. So, what do I do? Julian asked. Just accept it and suffer? You accept it, but you do not suffer, Elias replied, his eyes narrowing with intensity. You transform it, which leads us to the second Stoic way, amor fati, loving your fate. Elias stood up and walked over to a globe spinning quietly in the corner of the room. He placed his finger on it, stopping its rotation. Seneca wrote that we are like dogs tied to a moving cart. If we resist the cart, we are dragged, bloodied and bruised against the stones. If we walk with the cart, we still go where it goes, but we maintain our dignity and our skin. Fate has dictated that this woman does not value you. You can either be dragged by this reality, begging and pleading for her to turn around, or you can run with it. But the Stoics went one step further. They didn't just accept fate. They loved it. Amor fati is the practice of embracing everything that happens to you as if you had chosen it yourself. When a woman shows you she does not value you, she is actually handing you a profound gift. She is giving you the gift of the truth. Imagine, Elias continued, that you succeeded in manipulating her into staying. Imagine you played the right psychological games, bought the right gifts, and convinced her to remain by your side, even though in her core she didn't respect you. You would spend the next decade of your life walking on eggshells, constantly auditing your behavior, terrified that one wrong move would reveal her true indifference. You would live in a self-made prison of anxiety. By walking away, by showing you her coldness, she has set you free. She has saved you years of wasted time, energy, and resources. She has filtered herself out of your life. Julian felt a heavy, suffocating weight lift from his chest. The narrative he had been running in his head was one of loss. I lost the girl of my dreams. But Elias was forcing him to reframe the narrative. I was spared from a woman who was wrong for me. Rejection is not a deduction of your value, Elias said, looking directly into Julian's eyes. It is a cosmic redirection. It is the universe, or fate, or God, closing a door that led to nowhere, so that you are forced to turn around and walk toward your actual purpose. When she showed you she didn't value you, she did you the ultimate favor. She gave you your time back. You must learn to say thank you to the closed doors. You must look at this rejection and say, amor fati. I love this fate because it makes me stronger, wiser, and more aligned with the truth. Julian nodded slowly. The storm outside hadn't stopped. But the violent tempest inside his mind was beginning to calm. The illusion of control had been shattered, and in its place, the seeds of Stoic acceptance were planted. But acceptance was only the beginning. He now had to rebuild the foundation she had shaken. The following evening, Julian returned to the bookstore. The rain had cleared, leaving the city streets slick and reflective under the glow of the amber streetlights. He felt better than he had the day before, but a lingering doubt still gnawed at his insides. The intellectual understanding of control was one thing. The visceral emotional ache of feeling not good enough was another. He found Elias in the back room, sanding down a piece of reclaimed oak. The older man worked with rhythmic, deliberate strokes, completely absorbed in the task. "I understand that I cannot control her," Julian began, leaning against the doorframe. "And I am trying to see her exit as a gift. But how do I rebuild my confidence? When you are constantly dismissed by someone you admire, it chips away at your self-esteem. I feel like a lesser man today than I did a year ago." Elias paused his work, blowing the sawdust off the wood. He ran his calloused hand over the smooth surface. "That is because you outsourced your self-worth. You took the most valuable thing you possess, your judgment of yourself, and placed it entirely in the hands of an external judge. A judge, I might add, who is flawed, fickle, and operating on her own self-interest." Elias set the sandpaper down and turned to face Julian. "This brings us to the third Stoic way, guarding the inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and arguably the most powerful man in the world during his reign, faced betrayal, plague, war, and disrespect on a daily basis. Yet, he remained unshaken. How? Because he cultivated what the Stoics called the inner citadel. It is a fortress inside your mind, a place where no external event, no insult, no rejection, and no woman can enter without your permission. "Right now your citadel is in ruins," Elias said bluntly. "You left the drawbridge down, threw open the gates, and invited a woman in to sit on the throne of your mind. You gave her the gavel and told her she gets to decide if you are worthy. When she smiled at you, you felt like a king. When she ignored you, you felt like a peasant. You turned yourself into a slave to her moods." Julian felt the sting of truth in Elias's words. It was exactly what he had done. His entire day would be made or ruined by a single text message. If she was warm, the world was bright. If she was cold, he spiraled into anxiety. "Self-worth," Elias continued, pacing slowly around the room, "must be internally generated. It must be anchored to things that nobody can take away from you. A woman can take away her affection, her body, her presence, and her validation. But she cannot take away your discipline. She cannot take away your honor. She cannot take away your resilience, your work ethic, or your ability to reason. If you anchor your worth to your virtues, to the man you are building yourself to be, you become untouchable. To handle a woman who doesn't value you, you must stop seeking her permission to value yourself. You must retreat into your inner citadel. When she dismisses you, you look at the walls of your fortress. Are your values intact? Did you act with integrity? Are you pursuing your purpose? If the answers are yes, then her dismissal is nothing more than wind blowing against stone. It makes noise, but it causes no structural damage. Julian pulled up a stool, digesting the metaphor. But isn't it natural to want validation from the woman you are with? To want to be desired? It is natural to enjoy it when it comes naturally, Elias countered. It is deadly to need it, which leads us to the fourth Stoic way, Never trade virtue for validation. Elias walked over to a small shelf and pulled down a worn leather journal. Look at how modern men behave when they feel they are losing a woman. When she pulls away, what does the weak man do? He panics. He compromises his boundaries. He starts buying gifts he cannot afford. He ignores his friends. He skips the gym to be available for her. He abandons his personal mission, all to prove his devotion. In Stoic terms, he trades his virtue for validation. I did that, Julian admitted softly. I cancelled a weekend trip with my brother because she hinted she might want to hang out. And then she ended up making plans with her friends anyway. I felt pathetic. Because you were, Elias said, not with malice, but with a sharp, clinical honesty. You abandoned your duty to your brother and your duty to your own word to chase a breadcrumb of affection. You lowered your own moral baseline. And here is the brutal irony of female psychology, which perfectly aligns with Stoic philosophy. The more you abandon yourself to chase her, the faster she runs. A woman cannot respect a man who does not respect himself. If you are willing to throw away your own life structure to appease her, she will intuitively know that you are weak. You are a king who has abandoned his throne to beg at his own city gates. Stoicism teaches that virtue, courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom is the only true good. When a woman undervalues you, the temptation is to bend over backward to change her mind. You start people-pleasing. You become agreeable to a fault. You suppress your true opinions to avoid conflict. You sacrifice your temperance, your self-control, and give in to desperation. You must make a vow right now, Elias said, his voice ringing with authority. You will never, under any circumstances, negotiate your core values or compromise your dignity for the sake of female attention. If a woman requires you to degrade yourself, to abandon your purpose, or to act like a desperate fool to keep her, she is a disease to your soul. Let her go. Julian felt a surge of energy in his chest. It wasn't the frantic, anxious energy he had felt for the past 6 months. It was a cold, grounding power. He realized that his suffering wasn't caused by her lack of love, but by his own lack of self-respect. He had betrayed his own citadel. When she pulls away, Elias instructed, you do not lean in. You stand firm. You root yourself into your own life. You return to your mission, your physical training, your intellectual growth, and your brotherhood. You build a life that is so vibrant and inherently valuable that her absence is just a minor footnote in the grand biography of your existence. The anchor of self-worth is heavy, and it requires effort to forge. But once it is dropped into the seabed of virtue, no storm, and certainly no indifferent woman, can drag you out to sea. Julian left the bookstore that night with his head held higher, the walls of his inner citadel slowly beginning to rebuild. A week passed. Julian had begun to implement the principles Elias taught him. He stopped reaching out to her. He stopped checking her social media. He poured his spare time into reading, exercising, and catching up on the work he had neglected. Yet, the true test was always going to arrive eventually. It came on a Thursday evening in the form of a casual, non-committal text message from her. Hey, long time no see. Missed you around. We should catch up sometime. Julian stared at his phone. His heart rate spiked. The old neural pathways flared to life, urging him to reply immediately, to play it cool but eagerly accept, to jump back into the cycle. He put the phone in his pocket and immediately walked to the bookstore. When he showed Elias the message, the old man smiled a knowing, slightly sad smile. Ah, the ghost returns. Not out of genuine desire, but out of curiosity to see if you are still securely on the hook. How you respond to this, Julian, will define your trajectory. I don't know what to say to her, Julian confessed. Part of me wants to tell her off, to explain how much she hurt me and demand an apology. Another part of me wants to just go sit in her and hope things are different now. Both of those urges are driven by passion, not reason, Elias explained, sitting down at his small wooden desk. To complain, to demand an apology, or to eagerly rush back. All of these show that she still holds power over your emotional state. The Stoic response requires discipline. It brings us to the fifth Stoic way, the mastery of silence and withdrawal. Seneca wrote extensively about the value of time and the necessity of guarding it ruthlessly. Your attention is your most precious currency. Every second you spend focusing on someone, you are spending a piece of your life that you will never get back. When a woman has proven that she does not value your attention, the only logical, dignified response is to permanently withdraw it. Silence is not a weapon you use to punish her, Elias clarified, raising a finger for emphasis. This is a crucial distinction. Many modern men try to use the no-contact rule as a manipulative tactic to make a woman miss them. That is fake Stoicism. It is just another form of chasing, disguised as pulling away. You are still acting with the goal of altering her behavior. True Stoic silence is a shield used to protect you. Elias pointed to Julian's phone. You do not ignore her to make her mad. You ignore her, or respond with polite, distant brevity, because she has lost the privilege of your time. She has shown that she doesn't appreciate the warmth of your fire, so you stop giving her your firewood. It is a simple, economic reality. If you invest in a stock and it continuously plummets, do you keep throwing your life savings at it? No. You cut your losses and withdraw your capital. Julian looked at the screen again. The urgency to reply was fading, replaced by a logical clarity. So I shouldn't explain myself? I shouldn't tell her why I'm walking away? Never offer explanations to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, Elias said firmly. Over-explaining is a sign of a weak frame. It is you begging her to understand your perspective. Let your absence speak for you. Your silence will communicate far more power, dignity, and self-respect than a 1,000-word paragraph ever could. When you walk away in silence, you leave her with a mirror. You force her to sit with her own actions. Julian deleted the draft message he had unconsciously started typing. He felt a profound sense of agency returning to his fingertips, but there was still a lingering mental block. I can control my thumbs, Elias. I can stop myself from texting her. But how do I stop thinking about her? How do I stop imagining that she is this perfect, irreplaceable woman? Every time I close my eyes, I see her smile. I remember the good times, and I feel like I am losing an angel. Elias chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. An angel. Yes, the romanticized illusions of the mind. This is perhaps the greatest trap of the modern man. You do not miss her, Julian. You miss the fantasy of her that you painted in your own mind. This leads us to the sixth Stoic way, objective observation and stripping the illusion. The Stoics had a practice called fantasia, understanding our impressions of the world. Marcus Aurelius practiced a technique of stripping things down to their absolute, bare, objective reality to remove their emotional hold over him. When he looked at a lavish feast, he trained himself to see it not as a glorious banquet, but as the dead bodies of fish, birds, and pigs. When he looked at expensive purple robes, he saw them as sheep's wool dyed with shellfish blood. He did this to break the illusion of prestige and desire. "You must do the same with this woman," Elias instructed, leaning forward, his eyes locked onto Julian's. "You have placed her on a pedestal. You have layered her with attributes she has not earned. You see a goddess. You see an angelic muse. You see the only woman who can make you happy." Elias tapped his own temple. "Strip away the poetry. Strip away the Hollywood romance. What is she, objectively? She is a human being. She is flesh, bone, and blood. She is a mortal creature who goes to the bathroom, who gets bad breath, who has character flaws, insecurities, and selfish tendencies. She is a woman who struggles to recognize a good man when he is standing right in front of her. Is that the description of a goddess? Is that an angel?" Julian shook his head, a slight smile breaking through his serious demeanor. The spell was beginning to break. "We suffer," Elias continued, "because we fall in love with our own imagination. We project all our hopes, our desires for validation, and our dreams of a perfect future onto a completely ordinary woman. And then we are devastated when she acts like an ordinary, flawed human being. To stay unshaken, you must train your mind to see her exactly as she is, not as you wish she were. When you catch yourself romanticizing her," Elias advised, "interrupt the thought. Remind yourself, she is just a woman. She is a woman who did not value my time. She is a woman who left me waiting. She is a woman whose judgment is flawed. Deconstruct the idol. Smash the pedestal. When you bring her back down to earth, down to the level of a mere mortal, you will realize how absurd it was that you were bowing down to her." Julian took a deep breath. The suffocating grip that her memory had on his chest finally loosened. He wasn't losing a soulmate. He was discarding a false impression. He pulled out his phone, looked at her message one last time, and swiped left. Delete. No response. No explanation. Just the vast, powerful silence of a man who had reclaimed his inner citadel. He looked at Elias, feeling lighter, sharper, and more dangerous than he had in months. "I'm beginning to understand. But what do I do with all this energy now? The space she used to occupy in my head is suddenly empty." Elias's eyes gleamed with a fierce, quiet pride. "Nature abhors a vacuum, Julian. If you do not fill that empty space with something magnificent, the ghosts of the past will creep back in. Now that you have detached from the illusion, you must channel that fire toward the supreme goal." The next morning, the city of Haiphong woke up to a brilliant, unforgiving sun. The suffocating humidity and relentless rain of the past week had finally broken, leaving the streets washed clean and vibrant. Julian felt a strange, parallel clarity within himself. The crushing weight of the rejection had dissolved, but in its place, a restless, chaotic energy surged through his veins. It was the phantom limb of his discarded obsession. The hours he used to spend texting her, wondering about her, and planning his life around her were now vacant. He arrived at the bookstore earlier than usual. Elias was already there, sweeping the dust from the entryway with slow, methodical strokes. "I deleted the message," Julian announced, leaning against the doorframe. "I didn't reply. I feel liberated, Elias, but I also feel like a live wire. There is a quiet rage inside me, not at her, but at myself for wasting so much time. What do I do with this anger? How do I make it go away?" Elias stopped sweeping and rested his hands on the handle of the broom. He looked at Julian with a terrifyingly calm intensity. "You do not make it go away, Julian. To wish for the energy to dissipate is to throw away perfectly good fuel. This brings us to the 7th Stoic way, the transmutation of agony into action." Elias walked past Julian, gesturing for him to follow, and led him down to a small, cluttered basement beneath the shop. It was a workshop, filled with heavy iron tools, scrap metal, and a small, dormant furnace. The Stoics did not believe in suppressing emotion, Elias explained, picking up a heavy, rusted piece of iron. That is a common misunderstanding of the philosophy. A Stoic is not a robot who feels nothing. A Stoic is an alchemist. When a weak man feels pain, rejection, or anger, he uses it to destroy himself. He drinks it away, he complains, he becomes bitter, or he begs for mercy. He lets the fire burn down his own house. Elias tossed the heavy iron bar to Julian, who caught it, surprised by its sheer, unyielding weight. "But a Stoic," Elias continued, his voice echoing in the damp basement, "takes the fire of rejection and throws it into the furnace of his own ambition. Marcus Aurelius wrote, 'The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it.' You are a fire, Julian. This rejection, this anger, this wasted time, it is all just wood. Throw it into the forge." Julian looked down at the heavy iron in his hands. The metaphor was physical, visceral. "Right now, you have been handed a massive reservoir of aggressive, painful energy," Elias said. "A woman looked at you and decided you were not enough. Let that sting. Let it burn. But do not let it make you bitter. Let it make you a beast. Channel every ounce of that frustration into building a physical and mental vessel so formidable that it demands respect from the world. Go to the gym until your muscles tear and rebuild. Read the books you have been ignoring. Build the business you have been putting off. When you want to text her, drop to the floor and give the earth your sweat instead. This is the ultimate revenge, though a Stoic would never call it that. It is the ultimate reclamation of self. When a woman doesn't value you, she expects you to crumble. She expects you to linger in the background, a pathetic orbiter hoping for a scrap of her attention. By taking the pain she caused and using it to sculpt a masterpiece of your own life, you break the matrix. If you use this pain correctly, Elias whispered, stepping closer. 6 months from now, you will look in the mirror and you will not even recognize the man staring back at you. You will be physically stronger, financially sharper, and mentally unbreakable. And the most beautiful irony? By the time you become the man she would theoretically beg for, you will have outgrown the desire to entertain her. Julian felt the restless energy inside him suddenly lock into a focused, laser-like trajectory. He wasn't just going to move on, he was going to ascend. He would take every ounce of humiliation and forge it into discipline. For the next 3 months, Julian became a ghost to the world of distractions. He applied the 7th way with ruthless precision. When the phantom memories of her smile tried to invade his mind late at night, he didn't wallow. He opened a book on economics or philosophy. When the loneliness crept in on a Sunday afternoon, he put on his running shoes and sprinted until his lungs burned more than his heart. He stopped outsourcing his happiness and started manufacturing his own pride. His shoulders grew broader, his posture straightened. The desperate, anxious look in his eyes was replaced by the calm, lethal stare of a man who realized he was the architect of his own reality. He was no longer a victim of a woman's indifference. He was the master of his own forge. Autumn arrived, painting the city in shades of amber and gold. The crisp air carried a sense of finality, of old things dying to make way for the new. Julian walked into the rare bookstore, the bell chiming its familiar greeting. He was dressed sharply, moving with a deliberate, unhurried grace. He carried a rare first-edition translation of Seneca that he had spent weeks tracking down as a gift for Elias. Elias was sitting by the fireplace, sipping his black tea. He looked up, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his weathered face. He didn't need to ask how Julian was doing. The answer was written in the young man's posture, in the steadiness of his gaze, and in the quiet confidence that radiated from him. "You look like a man who has conquered his kingdom," Elias said, echoing his words from months ago. But this time the context had entirely flipped. Julian sat in the wooden chair, handing Elias the wrapped book. "I ran into her yesterday, Elias, at a coffee shop downtown." Elias raised an eyebrow, slowly unwrapping the book. "And? Did the fortress hold?" "It didn't even need to be defended," Julian smiled, a calm, easy smile. She looked at me. She noticed the changes. I could see the curiosity, maybe even a hint of regret in her eyes. She came over, tried to initiate a long conversation, tried to reopen the door she had closed. "And what did you do?" "I smiled," Julian said softly. "I was polite. I wished her well. And then I looked at my watch, told her I had work to do, and I walked away. Not out of spite. Not to play a game, but because I genuinely had better things to do." For the first time in my life, her opinion of me meant absolutely nothing. She was just a stranger I used to know. Elias closed his eyes and nodded profoundly. "You have reached the summit, Julian. You have embodied the 8th Stoic way, devotion to the logos over the ego. The Stoics believed in the logos, the universal reason, the higher purpose, the divine order of the universe. When a man is enslaved by his ego, his entire life is a desperate scramble to secure validation from women, from society, from his peers. He wants to be seen as attractive, wealthy, and important. Because his goals are external, he is always vulnerable. He is always at the mercy of whoever holds the validation he seeks. But when a man devotes himself to his logos, to his higher purpose, he becomes untouchable," Elias explained, placing the Seneca book gently on the table. "You stopped making a woman the center of your universe, and you placed your purpose there instead. Your purpose cannot wake up one morning and decide it doesn't love you anymore. Your discipline cannot leave you on red. Your pursuit of excellence cannot ghost you. This is the ultimate secret of the unshaken man. You do not handle a woman who doesn't value you by trying to outsmart her, outplay her, or manipulate her. You handle her by making her entirely irrelevant to your core mission. A man with a fierce, unwavering purpose," Elias continued, his voice dropping to a resonant, powerful timbre, "is a force of nature. He is a river carving through stone. If a woman wants to walk alongside the river, she is welcome. If she wants to leave, the river does not stop flowing. It does not reverse its current to chase her. It continues toward the ocean. You, Julian, have become the river." Julian looked into the crackling fire. The warmth of the flames mirrored the deep, sustaining warmth in his own chest. He had come to this bookstore a shattered boy, begging for a strategy to win back a woman who didn't care if he existed. He was leaving as a man who realized he was the prize of his own life. "I owe you a great debt, Elias," Julian said, standing up and extending his hand. Elias stood and clasped Julian's hand with a grip of iron. You owe me nothing. The philosophy was always there. You simply had to bleed enough to be willing to apply it. Remember this feeling, Julian. The world will try to shake you again. There will be other women, other rejections, other failures. But the citadel is built. Keep the gates guarded, keep the forge burning, and never, ever negotiate your crown. Julian stepped out of the bookstore and onto the bustling streets of Haiphong. The sun was setting, casting long, heroic shadows across the pavement. He took a deep breath of the autumn air. He had no anxiety about the night, no desperate need to check his phone, and no void in his chest waiting to be filled by someone else's approval. He was alone, but he was not lonely. He was self-contained. He was grounded. And as he walked into the rest of his life, he knew with absolute, terrifying certainty that he was, and forever would be, unshaken. True strength isn't about forcing someone to see your worth. It's about never forgetting it yourself. Rejection is merely the universe clearing the path for your ultimate purpose. If this journey into Stoic wisdom helped you reclaim your power and rebuild your inner citadel, don't just walk away. Stand with us. Hit that like button. Share this video with a brother who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more philosophy that forges iron minds. Stay grounded, stay focused, and above all, stay unshaken.